All right, Brother Wilson. So this is my family. This is the audience that I selected and emailed about mid-semester. So everything I did in the class was focused towards my family. My website and my research was based off of questions that they had or interests that they possibly have in the country. We're just going to go ahead and do a quick introductions. We're just kind of going to run through their names and yeah.
Can I start?
Yeah, go for it.
Hi Chris, I'm Shannon Youngstrom, you know me. Good to see you. Although I don't see you.
Hey, I'm Brigham, and I am a senior.
Okay, that's good.
I'm Cambria, and I'm a junior.
I'm Britton's dad, and he says you're his favorite teacher.
Yeah, it's been fun to have you as a teacher. I tell him about that a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and just talk about the basics of Djibouti first. But do you have any questions, first off, that you'd like me to address during this about Djibouti or about that region of Africa?
How did you know how to pronounce the name?
Because I heard Chris say it, and then I asked Siri. Not that she's usually right.
So I had questions when I went over your website. Do you want to go over that now or later? Or?
We can actually just hit that right now. I think that'd be good. It'd be good. So you had several different questions. I don't have the questions, your specific questions.
Yeah. Do you want me to repeat some of them?
I have the responses to them, so I could probably. You want to know more about the Christians and their life in Djibouti. Mm-hmm. And then you also want to know a little bit more about the history of Djibouti, along with Mom and Brigham. And you wanted to know if any of the surrounding countries were violent or how that went. Oh, my. Right. Yeah. Okay, so, I mean, as far as the Christians go in Djibouti...
You have like a percent of how many?
Yeah, I looked it up. So, for a Christian, there's roughly 900,000 people in Djibouti, and approximately 15,000 of them are Christians. So 15,000 of 900,000 people are Christians in the country of Djibouti. So it's like being Mormon, right? I mean, so there's a very low percentage. So if there is Christians, they're frowned upon a lot. Another interesting fact is that in 2014, Djibouti was ranked number 46, the 46th most dangerous country for Djibouti to live in.
For Christians to live in.
For Christians to live in, yeah. But this year, it jumped up to the 24th most dangerous country for Christians
to live in.
In just 1 year. It became twice as dangerous.
So I wonder if ISIS is making it like that because they really don't want Christians.
Yeah, and where it is strategically, it's right on the mouth of the Red Sea. So they get a lot of traffic through the Red Sea, and so I mean they have a large influence from Islamic radicalism. The jihadists. They go through there. It's a big transit country for jihadist radicals, and they leave a footprint behind, and it really scarred the country a lot because of that.
What's their main product that they export and stuff? What's their or how do they make money?
So one of their main exports.
Unless there's other stuff you want to cover.
No, actually, that's one of the questions that Mom asked is what's their main export. So I looked it up, so I have the answer for it. About 26.5% of their exports are live animals. 20% is mineral fuels, oils, and distillation products. And then about 6.8% are raw hides, skins, and leathers. And then they participate in shipping, and they're kind of like a port for a lot of shipping companies. As they'll come in, they'll drop their load and switch boats at the mouth of the Red Sea. So it's right on the Horn of Africa, and Yeah, so there's a lot of traffic through there.
When you say it's like jump to the 24th most dangerous, is that fighting amongst each other, or is that just dangerous for people coming into the country getting killed?
Just dangerous for Christians to live in.
Okay.
So people have, in the last year, become a lot more violent towards Christians and towards Christian values. I think a lot of that has to do with, I guess people's view on America, people's view on, but it's always been Muslims versus Christians, and that border has become a lot more rigid lately, and so it's become a lot more dangerous for Christians to live in Djibouti. Yes, sir.
So is it mostly blacks that live there?
The majority is Africans, and but about a majority of their population lives in poverty. There's only a few that live in. There's the main city is called Djibouti, the city of Djibouti, and that's the capital city. Just let me see if I can pull this up. We don't get internet very well in here, but just well enough. So let's see. So about 18% of Djibouti is living in poverty, and the poverty in the rural areas is about 7 times as bad as it is in the rural urban areas. So the interesting challenge for Djibouti is roads and getting to different places. You'll have a small settlement, small village, and if the road gets washed out or something happens like that, then they won't have contact with the outside world. They're just going to be living on their own.
So they probably don't have cell phones and stuff, right?
In the city, they do all right.
Well, he said on there what percent had internet access, and it wasn't very many.
Yeah. So what was it?
So just maybe some of the areas in the cities would have not so much towers.
Which is interesting because it's just the opposite in the United States. The urban areas have a lower poverty, I think, and the rural areas are better.
Yeah, trying to look it up. So about 48,000 people have internet access out of 900,000 that live in Djibouti. So there isn't a very wide.
So that's like maybe 5%.
It is 6.5% of the people have internet. And so something we talked about a lot is the globalization of countries. So the globalization is where they're at in their development. So there's globalization stage 1, 2, and 3. Number one is that they're just working from country to country. They're trying their hardest at that. And then globalized number 2 is they're working from company to company. So they're a little bit more developed. They don't have to depend on trade between countries as much, but working within the country and working between companies. And then globalization stage 3 is when they're able to work individuals. There's individuals that are able to go out and make differences and propose ideas and are really able, like if you have an idea, you can go out and achieve it. So those are kind of different ways that Djibouti or countries are classified in their globalization. So I classified Djibouti as globalization stage 2 only because of their ability to export and the shipping that they have. But the majority of the country is only globalized to stage 1, where they're depending on the country itself to help keep them afloat and to help them to keep going.
So did you say it's like a democracy or the king? Or?
Yeah, it's a republic is what it is. So they have an elected ruler, and I kind of covered it a little bit in the history. Uh, they've been ruled by France for a long time. Ever since, was it 1839? That's when they first initially made contact with Djibouti. They were interested in Djibouti because of its strategic location on the Red Sea, and they wanted to have control of it. So that's why the majority of the people in Djibouti speak French, is because of the influence that they had.
They don't have any control of it now? Did they lose it at some point?
They still have a good amount of influence on the country, and I think they're still under the country, under France's rule. But they do have an elected ruler. So, I mean, in 1894, the first French administration was set up in Djibouti, in the capital city of Djibouti, and it kept pretty stable up until World War II, and this is where the Italians, their forces really pushed into Djibouti and overran the French, and so the French were pushed out of Djibouti in 1940, in June of 1940, but 2 years later, British forces and Commonwealth people, so just people from that area, they came and they fought and regained Djibouti. So that was in 1942, and so by the end of that 1942, Djibouti had about 4,000 British troops in it, helping to keep the peace and keep the Italians out. And then moving on, after that happened, a local battalion of men were gathered together, and they helped to liberate Paris in 1944, I believe. Yep. So in 1944, there was a group from Djibouti that was essential in the liberation of Paris, which is kind of cool because they don't have African Americans that really, at that time, they were really segregated and pushed back, but they're allowed to fight for their rights.
African American?
Africans. There was no American in them, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never even heard of the country before. So.
Yeah, neither had I. It's really, really small country. I should have looked up what its square mileage was. It really doesn't cover a whole lot of ground, and it's fairly spread out. Rural mostly, except for right in the country, like in the city of Djibouti itself. I mean, let me see if I can find it. In the city of Djibouti itself, I mean, probably has it has over half of the country's population in this one city.
So is it really rugged, mountainous terrain, or more desert?
It's desertous and really hilly, mostly, and it's fairly dry terrain, depending on the part of Djibouti that you're in. Some of you may have noticed that I selected a hometown. We had to select a place that we really related to in Djibouti, and so I picked Bangkok. And this is on the border of the Red Sea, and this is one of the more lush areas of Djibouti, and this is where I have that information about the palm tree that Cambria was so interested in. So I mean, yeah, it was home to the palm Livistonia carneus, which is a very rare species of palm trees. And it's only found in that one country. There's only about 400 trees of that kind left in the world, and so it's just right there in that.
It's a type of palm tree?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah. Interesting fact is I read that palm trees aren't actually trees. They're just a big bush, a shrub. Yeah, interesting.
A shrub that's as tall as a tree.
Yeah. It was interesting the debates that people would put on there. They're like, some of the tallest trees and palm trees are in there, and people were throwing up a big debate. They're not really trees. But I feel like that'd be a really pretty place to vacation to because, it has an average of 87 degrees, so it's a little warm with a humidity of like 66%. But it's really green, lush, And as you can see in these pictures, I mean, it looks like just kind of a fun place to check out and experience the film.
As long as nobody knows you're Christian, huh?
Fair enough. Yeah.
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 But what kind of animals do they have?
They generally just have like, I mean, a lot of just cattle, sheep.
Camels?
As much as I'd like to say yes, I don't think they really do have a whole lot of camels. They might have some, but I'm sure they have some camels as pack animals. Yeah. So, a little bit more about questions that you guys asked.
I have a question.
Yes, Karen?
When was it established?
When was it an established country? So, when it was established, I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, didn't you say in
94. That's when the first French administration was settled in it, and it was somewhere around that time. It was the early 1900s is when it was established as a country. So it's been around for a little while.
It's been around forever. As long as the earth has.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting as I was researching the history of it. I mean, people inhabited it since the Neolithic period. It's a really long time ago, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. They find the people that look like cavemen. This is where the people were. They found pottery that's tens of thousands of years old, supposedly.
Supposedly, except for Adam came like 6,000 years ago, right?
Yeah. So it's a conflict in carbon dating. But yeah. So there's been people around in that area for a long time. Maybe they were just creatures that looked like people and acted like people. Yeah, so Djibouti's been inhabited for a long time. They've even found they just found a lot of stuff there. Where else was I going? Oh, Mom, you asked me about the happiness index.
Yeah.
And what that means. Just a sec, let me see if I can find what that is under. I think it's under poverty and hunger. So the happiness index, while it's loading, it's based off of life expectancy, it's based off of experienced well-being, how well people are living, and ecological footprint, so where their footprint is.
So it's not a person's opinion of if they're happy or not.
Yeah, it's just different factors playing into it. So the happiness index is 37.6, and it's on a scale of 0 to 100, 100 being most happy. So it can be tough to live.
What's the life expectancy?
So the average life expectancy is 61.3 years in Djibouti as of 2012.
I think that's funny because even if some of the happiest people live in poverty, in undeveloped countries, and so it's kind of funny that's called the happiness index. 'Cause I don't think that's a good term.
Yeah, yeah. It was interesting. What was it? I was in my family relations class, and this made me think a lot of Djibouti. But the teacher was saying, oh, actually, this is the same tablet I use. It was kind of like President Monson's quote, but it says, "You can never get enough of what you don't need, because what you don't need cannot satisfy you." So in countries that in this country that we live in.
Brigham's.
Yeah.
I'm satisfied.
Are you?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think in about 3 months you'll probably be looking for another case. But people are always trying to get more of what doesn't satisfy. But we see in countries like Djibouti where life is so simple that people, even in the most dire circumstances, can still be happy, and it's because they don't have how did Thomas S. Monson put it? Do you remember that quote? They don't have a lot of what. They have little of what matters least and a lot of what matters most, or something like that. And I can't remember how I phrased it. I wish I could. But the people in Djibouti really make do with what they got, because it is such a, like, if you look here, I mean, they have a box spring, I mean, a mattress that they've made their house out of, and a couple rugs, some sticks, and this is where they live. So, I mean, when we think of Africa, we generally think of places like this. Third world country. And it's not like that in the city of Djibouti itself, for the most part. It's fairly well developed. I don't have any pictures of Djibouti itself, the city of Djibouti. Yeah, actually. So,
What's the average income?
the average income is, I want to say, $1.25 a day. Yeah. So, well, just,
And is that converted?
yeah, it's a little bit more than that.
Is that converted to our money?
Yeah, $1
A day?
per day.
It's more than you make.
No.
Maybe.
Well, I'll work a day and then be there a year.
So, just some questions. We're personally going through elections coming up in the next year, so we're starting to see the candidates on TV. And Djibouti, if you read my website, you saw there's Millennial Development Goals, and so there was disease, education, environmental sustainability, gender equality, global partnerships, infant mortality, maternal health, and poverty and hunger. And so the goals were to conquer all those and overcome those. And that is for every single country in the whole entire world, have goals to better meet standards in those areas. And that's kind of the take on global development. So the question I'd like to propose is, so we're about to get a new president. What would you advise the new president's take be on global development?
For our country?
Yeah, and just for global development as a whole, like how we can best help African countries, like the country of Djibouti itself.
I think we need to help our country first.
I know if you ask people that question, people are so tired of the Middle East that it's like they want to sever all ties with them because they've been fighting for thousands of years and they can never stop. It's like so bred into their DNA to fight and hate, and so yeah, that's the thing. It's like oil. That's one of the main exports over there in that whole area, and so many people here in the United States just want to sever all ties with them because of the the violence and stuff over there. But so yeah, it's hard to say. And this is kind of we're just saying, just like the Christians over there, you feel bad for them, you want to help them almost, and I mean, if the church was over there and growing strong, that would help it a lot too, because the church teaches you how to be, get educated and be self-reliant and everything, that they don't.
They don't have that influence.
Yeah, they don't have that structure or education or just so much violence.
So I mean, yeah, you can definitely relate Djibouti kind of. I don't know. It's kind of like, think of a dysfunctional family, right? Say you have your two parents, and then you have the two or so favorite children, and then there's there's kids that the stepdad doesn't care about, and that the mother doesn't care about, and they're just kind of off to the sides. The majority of everybody lives in Djibouti, while there's many people on the outskirts that are just neglected and that people don't really pay attention to. They're lacking in education, they're lacking in resources, and I mean, it's kind of like a dysfunctional family at times. And that's kind of sad to see. Just to wrap it up, do you have any more questions about Djibouti?
Yeah, I have 10 questions. No, I'm kidding.
I was like, all right, bring it on. So, yeah, any more questions?
You've done really good. You've answered all the questions I had.
Yeah, it was a good website. I was impressed with.
I'm just a little curious in how you got assigned Djibouti.
I got an email the day after semester started and said, here's the country you'll have.
Okay. Just assigned.
Kind of like a mission call. It'd be like, okay, where's that country at?
Yeah.
And then,
So we didn't get to really pick.
Yeah.
We had to look it up.
Did everybody have them like all over the world?
Yeah, just different countries. There's countries in the Philippines. North Korea was assigned out. Iran, Iraq. I don't know if Iran was, but Iraq definitely
So
was.
did you learn anything about any of the other countries? Anything else?
No, during the class periods, we generally just presented, we just researched our own personal countries. There wasn't much presentations during the class on other countries per se. And, there was pertaining to, some African countries, just so we can get an idea of what to look for in our own countries. But as far as other students presenting information, there wasn't a whole lot of that.
Were the main things picked third world countries or just?
Yeah, developing countries is how they put it. So developing as in they're working at it. Sometimes, Brother Wilson was saying that it's offensive for them to be called a third world country. It's like they're like, we're a developing country.
Yeah.
We're working on a country.
well, yeah, I had some of those questions. I was like, should I ask him these questions? Because I wasn't sure if he'd have the answer. You've answered all of them really well, so you need to research it. So.
Yeah, thank you. And then if you check out my website, it has a lot of other things like health and how well the health is, how their educational systems work. Also talking about infant mortality and how mothers' health generally are. Yep. So their birth rate's gone down a lot over the last 10 years, and it's directly in correlation with the infant deaths that they've had. So I think in 1991, the average woman had 6.1 children. I don't know where the 0.1 comes from. I'm just kidding. Tumor. But in 2013, the average household size or average child was 13.4. Not 13 but 3.4.
Yeah, so they took 1,000 kids and as many mothers and divided it through, and that's how they came up with those decimals. But so it went from 6.
Yeah, so
to 3, so almost half.
Yeah, childbearing dropped by half. But so did maternal deaths. So there's obviously a direct correlation there. Yeah. Just looking at it, his healthcare has gone better. Even in Djibouti, the healthcare has gone better. So that is the country of Djibouti. Yeah.
Good job.
All right.